All right, thank you for joining me today. In this video, what we're going to be doing is exploring the three verb moods in English. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the indicative, imperative, and subjunctive moods. I'm going to very quickly go through a definition of each of those three moods, and then the exercise for today will involve me reading several sentences to you, and within each of these sentences, you must make an identification as far as which verb mood is present in said sentence. For now, let's go ahead and jump into the definitions of each. So starting first with our indicative mood, quite simply, these essentially are statements of fact, or in the case of an interrogative, a request for fact, or in some cases, an opinion. Now for the, and I should give an example. So the examples here are, where is the hospital? There's your first interrogative, and it's requesting a fact. It wants to know the location of a hospital. Okay, the mood there is indicative. Now the mood here for the second example is also in the indicative, which is a statement of fact. Thomas will leave for the airport at 4 o'clock. Again, it could also be a deliverable in terms of it being an opinion, not necessarily a fact, but in these two examples, we're requesting factual information. Now for the imperative mood, it's a fancy way of making or stating a command or a request of some kind, whether polite or more direct. Now here, the subject is implied as being you, because typically with a command, it's addressed to the person being spoken to. Therefore, when read, assume that in that case, and of course you have to look at the context of the sentence, the subject is you. Examples: slice those carrots, please. Very polite request. Watch out for that squirrel, a more direct warning. In either case, a request is being made, or a command in this case. Now for the subjunctive mood, it refers to a hypothetical situation or something that is not true or not yet true. So for instance, and this is usually indicated with the word if, right, as a good example. It often appears in front of the statement or in front of that verb, but not always. So just keep that in mind. So in the first example, we're going to use if. So if the furnace were to stop working, I would know who to call. So if hasn't happened yet, but if this thing were to happen, I would do the next thing. Tanya wishes she were better at tennis, okay? Here, we didn't use if. Instead, we're using that verb were, that she were better at tennis, but she wishes, hasn't happened yet. It's a hypothetical. I insisted that my brother shut the door, okay? Here, well, he hasn't shut it, but I did make that insistence. So it's not a command, but I'm letting you know that I had implied or deeply insinuated that I would like for him to shut this door, but it may not have happened at all. All right, so here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and look at some of those identification sentences, or those sentences wherein we will need to make an identification. Now we're going to identify the indicative with an IN, the imperative with an IM, and the subjunctive with an S. So let's start with our first sentence. So the first one reads, hoping you can read that. Let me make that a little larger for your sake. If I were you, I would not buy those shoes. Well, what's the indicator? Well, first of all, what's the mood? I can tell right away it's the subjunctive, because not always, but keep in mind here in this case, we have if I were you, which I'm not, it's a hypothetical. This right here, because it tells me it's a hypothetical, instantly I can tell we're looking at a subjunctive mood. So I'm going to put an S right next to it. Number 2, please head out onto the field and form 2 teams. Well, which mood do you suppose it is? Is it an imperative, wherein I'm making a request or a command? Indicative, wherein I'm stating or requesting information? Or is it subjunctive, as a hypothetical? Please head out onto the field. It's a command, therefore it's an imperative. So I'm going to indicate that with an IM. Excuse my handwriting. All right, sentence number 3. The light bulbs cost more at the grocery store than they do here. Now here, I'm going to go ahead and grab onto this. Now here, I'm delivering a statement of fact. So it's the indicative mood. Number 4, when will Uncle Tashi be arriving from Tel Aviv? Well, here I'm requesting information, or requesting something factual. In this case, even though it is a request, it's still an indicative. Whoops. Number 5, I wish the beach was a shorter drive away than 3 hours. I wish tells you, it's It's not something that exists yet, so it's not yet true. Therefore, it must be in the subjunctive mood. Number 6, Miss Stacy recommends that each girl practice for at least 2 hours per week. Okay, well, here it's a little tricky because it seems as though you've got two different moods going on at the same time. Miss Stacy recommends that each girl practice for at least 2 hours per week. You could argue that it is in fact an imperative because it is making a request or a command, right? You should practice for 2 hours per week. However, she's recommending it. So it hasn't yet happened yet. So, oh my gosh, maybe it's the subjunctive. Okay, but here Miss Stacy recommends. So I'm letting you know that this particular person, as a statement of fact, recommends that each girl practice for at least 2 hours per week. Therefore, one could argue it should be the indicative mood. Number 7, before writing the invitations, purchase some nice stationery. Okay, before writing the invitations, hasn't happened yet, purchase some nice stationery. There's your operative clause. That's your command, which is an imperative. I am. Number 8, New Zealand lies to the southeast of Australia. Statement of fact. So I'm hoping you got this one as indicative. And if you were to rewrite this section, your report would be ready to hand in. Again, not always, but more often than not, you're going to see a sentence with the word if being subjunctive, right? Because it's implying that it hasn't or doesn't exist or hasn't happened. Whoops, why did I ignore that? Sorry, it should be S. And number 10, click this link to unsubscribe from the newsletter. It is a command, right? So this one's going to be an imperative. It's not saying if you click this link, or which would be subjunctive, or we'll just leave it as is. I'm not sure why I'm complicating it. All right, so hopefully your identifications match my own. If otherwise, please let me know what you got in the comment section below. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and if that is the case, please give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. And subscribe should you want to continue to practice with me. All right, thank you.